Hey guys, so you're gonna have to let me know if this stream has full resolution, because for whatever reason YouTube seems to be going nuts. And even though it says I'm live, I don't see that I'm live. Okay, yeah, it looks like it has 1080 resolution. I think we're good to go. Everybody hear me? Everybody good to go? I'll take that as a yes. All right. So today we're going to be working on a clock application, and I've only really looked at the contest rules. Let's take a look at them together. So for those of you who don't know, they're holding a contest, build a clock for Lenovo. I think they have like a smart clock. It's going to look something like this, and essentially they want you to build like a screen in Flutter. And they even supply you with some repositories. So there's an analog and a digital clock. And you can use these as starting points. I'm not going to do that myself for this, but yeah, you could use them as starting points. What I'll probably end up doing is just take the data from these, because I know they have models that they want to import, and I'll just bring them into the app after I build the thing. So let's see, yeah, it's this Flutter Clock Helper library. It has its own model, and it has things like 24 hours, location, temperature, converting from Celsius, all that stuff. So I assume they want the clock to have weather and location. But they also say in the submission, if I can find it, that you shouldn't use outside APIs. So you shouldn't ping to a GPS, or you shouldn't try to bring in weather from like a API, because I'm assuming they're going to set all that up themselves. All right, so the idea that came to me for a clock was to use the painter that we already used twice in previous videos. So some of you may remember that we did a timer application. This is actually a live stream that we did on, I think it was functional widget and Flutter hooks. And we took that timer example and we just fleshed it out a bit more. In this timer example, we have this like painter, and what it does is it basically builds a animated circle on top of another animated circle. So it like sort of fills in the circle over time, and so I figure we could reuse this painter and basically add 3 circles, make them concentric, and then have one of them be like seconds, one of them be minutes, and one of them be hours. Alrighty, so let's actually start doing that then. So I went ahead and I generated an app, of course, and then I just stripped everything out of it. I'm just going to grab the custom painter and bring it in here. And yeah, so just copying it directly. Probably should put it in its own file. So let's just call this timer painter. And I'll just grab all this stuff that I just copied and just put it in there. I'm gonna need, I need math, and I know I need, let's just bring in material. All right, so that should be good to go. As far as the actual app itself goes, and hang on. All right, I'll just leave the emulator up there. As far as the actual app itself goes, it's really just pretty simple, like the actual body. I do, however, want to use like a block. So I went ahead and brought in Provider and Rx Start prior to the stream. And these, of course, are the versions that I'll be using. And I'm going to create a block here that will just provide a stream of date time objects so that we can use those to refresh our date time. And essentially the block will just send a event through the stream every second. And we could, of course, adjust this. We can make it every half a second or, even faster if we wanted to. And each time we get that event, we'll display it in the clock. All right, so let me create that block. So I'll just call this timer block and create it. All right, so kind of thinking of how I want to structure this thing. So I think I could just recursively call a function which will just call datetime now and then just pass that along. So maybe I need Dart async, I think. And I'm gonna need Rx Start, of course. All right, so we'll have the constructor, and I'm going to use this constructor to call that function that I just described. And what we'll do is we'll first create a behavior subject. Call this, I don't know, clock. So this will be our main stream controller, and we'll use this to pass in the date time and everything. And then we'll have a getter. So this would be like a function, takes in a date time, and we'll call this set time. And yeah, this will just point towards the clock sync add function. And we'll use that to add our events to this behavior subject. So now let's create the function to do that. So future void, I'll just call this update time. Oops. And essentially I just want to call the set time. So I can call this like a function, and I can just call date time dot now inside of it. Then we can say return future dot delayed. We could put in our duration. So this will be 1 second. And then we can just recall the update time function in here. So we're just recursively calling this over and over and over again every second, and then passing these datetime calls into our behavior subject. And then in the constructor here, we can just call update time like that. So when this block gets created, when the app opens, we just start pinging and pushing the data into our stream. Of course, we're going to need to be able to grab that stream, so we just create a getter for that. So I guess this would be value observable get, and we'll just call this time. So this would be the clock dot stream dot, yeah, so because it's a behavior subject, I have to call it a value observable. I don't think I can just cast it as an observable anymore. Oh, maybe I can. Oh, whatever. Should be all right, like that. And then, of course, we need our dispose function so that we can call it from provider, so that we can dispose of this block if we need to. So clock dot dispose as a close. Yeah, close. All right, so there's our block. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward, and it should give us a fairly accurate time. If we wanted to make it a little bit more accurate, we could make this into milliseconds. So we could update it maybe 10 times a second. I'm not really concerned about that right now, though. I just want to get this thing working. And if I find that it's like delayed or behind or for whatever reason, then it'll be worth fiddling around with this number. All right, do any of you guys have any questions? So sorry if I butcher your name. Somali, I hope that's your name. Anyway, Somali Flame says, don't know much about Dart. How is it compared to Python? Well, Dart, so Python is object-oriented, but I kind of feel like the object-oriented programming in Python is a little bit incidental. Like, you can use it, but you don't have to. Whereas Dart is very much an object-oriented language. That being said, it also has a lot of really nice functional stuff inside of it too. And it's a very intuitive language. Even if you don't, if you're not familiar with like curly bracket syntax, you could get started with Dart pretty quickly, just simply because it's very straightforward. It's a lot more like C# or Java than Python, but I think there are enough similarities in the language that you'd be able to understand, at the very least, what I'm doing here, or you'd be able to do some stuff yourself. All right, so let's go back into main and wire all this up. So Barrow Solo, he asks, what's the difference between sync.add versus just add? So sync.add is pushing the event into the event sync. I don't think I can just call clock.add. All right, maybe I can, but I think this is essentially the same function. I think it's aliased. So you're still passing this into the stream and then, well, passing this into the sync and then passing along to the stream. So really, I don't think it matters if I put sync here. I like being explicit about what I'm doing. So by saying, okay, well, I'm adding this to the sync, I'm basically saying, all right, I'm putting this event in the back of the stream and then it's going to be fed to the UI. But yeah, you could, as you've pointed out, you can just call add on the behavior subject and you would get the same effect. All right, so we need to be able to inject our provider at the top of our app. So we want to inject it above, let's just inject it above our My Home page. So let's just wrap this in a new widget, provider. And I think we can just use the provider. Of course, we need to bring in our block. Timer block, and yeah, we'll put this in here. So that this uses I think it's a builder, and I think the builder, yeah, it takes the context and it should just build our block. So let me just pull this out. So timer block that. Oh yeah, no wonder we're getting an error. I forgot to bring in provider. I hate how the auto import sometimes drops out like that. All right. So it's telling me builder is apparently depreciated. Well, that's interesting. So then what does it want me to do now? I guess we just use provider value. So I guess value. Is that how it works? Let's see. This still has builder in it. It doesn't have value. I don't know why it's saying it's depreciated, even though it's telling me to do something else. Whatever. You know what? I'll just leave it like this, and if it causes an error, we'll do something else. We need to put the context in here, and then we'll make our dispose function, which takes in the context and the block, And then we can just call block.dispose like that. And then we put in the child, which is our my home page. This is bugging me. Use create. Okay, so it's create instead. I guess create. Yeah, it takes in the same function, so I guess they just changed the name. I'm assuming there's some functionality underneath that they've changed as well. All right, so we've set up our provider here, and then down here in our my home page, we can just get the provider. So I'm just gonna go block equals provider timer block of context. That should be all right, except it's not. Oh, right. I wonder. This needs to be here. All right. So we get our block. We want to then take and create a stream builder. So I'm going to turn this container into a stream builder. And it'll be a stream builder that takes in a date time type. Like that. So then we can just say the stream is the block time. That's what we called it. And then we need our builder for this. So context. And we'll put in the snapshot here. I'm putting in the type just so that we can explicitly call it what's going on here. Value observable can be assigned. All right, so I guess we'll just convert this to an observable. Okay. It's still having an issue with it, so let's just convert it to a broadcast stream perhaps. Okay, I'll just convert it to a stream then. And I'm sure our emulator is getting red, so let me just black that out for now, so you guys don't have to worry about it. All right, so got our builder and everything. We just want to check to see if we have data. So if snapshot has data, if that's false, meaning we don't have data, turn a circular progress indicator. Otherwise, we want to return. So what I'm thinking is we create a stack here, and not stack, a stack, and we have our circles. We'll have them all in one painter, and then in the middle of the circles, we'll have a digital clock that just shows the actual time. So we can just take the date time stream and take that time and just convert it into a string and then put it in the middle. So we can use the stack to overlay these two things on top of each other. So first, of course, we need our timer painter. So we're actually going to need to create a new widget here. So let's just call this timer builder. And it'll be stateless. Put the build function in here. And for now, we'll just return a container. All right, so with this stack, we want to start, oh, by the way, so let me show you guys this. If we come back to the specification for the clock, there's an aspect ratio that they want it to be. So they want it to be in landscape mode with a 5:3 aspect ratio. And so we really need to keep that in mind when building our app. So in this stack here, we can wrap our painter in an aspect ratio widget. Not ratio. So, and then we can just give it an aspect ratio of 5 divided by 3. And then the child here will just be our, I don't know what I did. The child here will just be our timer builder. And then after this, we'll have our digital clock. And we could use a positioned to do this, or we could use an aligned. I'd rather use an aligned because, oh, whoops. This is not actually inside of the stack for whatever reason. Forgot to do that, so let's put that in here. And then, yeah. So after the aspect ratio, we'll have an alignment. Or is it just an align? Yeah. Align widget. And we can use the align widget to kind of put everything in the center. So alignment will be alignment.center. And then in here we'll just have a text widget, and we can put our digital clock string in there. And I guess I could do it right now, but I'd rather build like a method that generates this string rather than just doing it all by hand in here. So let's do that right now. So I'll just create a function rather than a method. So I'll just create digital time, and we're just going to pass in our date time. So date time, and then we'll convert this to a string. So what we can do is go time dot hours. Now, of course, I need string interpolation. Time dot hours. Time dot hour rather. And we'll take the hour. We'll go to string, and then we want to go pad left, and so that we can add zeros to this. So if it's like 1 o'clock, it would just be a 1 digit. Instead, we want it to be 2 digits, so we could just do it like that. And afterwards, we'll have a colon like this, and we'll repeat that process for the minutes and the seconds. So let me just grab this part here. And actually, I'll just copy it over and change this to minute, and then second. I know this is getting really long. Hopefully you guys can see it. Let me think. All right, so another thing that we want to worry about is the fact that the time that we're going to get is going to be in military time. So it's going to be 24 hours rather than 12. We want to be able to convert it back and forth. I'm not going to worry so much about having a toggle. I'm just going to create a function that converts it to just 24 or 12-hour time. And then we'll just leave it as that. If we get to it, then we'll create some kind of functionality to allow our clock to show military time instead. Excuse me. All right, so we'll just say create a function here called convert hours, and this will just take in an int of hour. And then all we really want to do is just say int hour. If our hours is greater than 12, and it should be hour. If hour is greater than 12, then we'll say hour minus 12. Otherwise, we'll just pass hour in. And let's just call this h. I've been doing too much Rust, so I'm used to being able to shadow variables and stuff like that. And that's why I'm also typing everything out in snake case rather than camel case. All right. So this will give us our 24 hours or our 12-hour time. We also want to turn the 0th hour into 12, because in military time, would it be 12 or would it be 1? I think we just need to turn it into 1. So 0 hour, I think, is just 1 o'clock. Or no, it's 12 o'clock, right. So in 24-hour time, you have up to 23, and then it goes 0, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. So we need to get rid of that 0, so we'll say if h equals 0. We can use another ternary operator here and just say if it's 0, then make it 12, otherwise just pass back h. And now we can just take this and wrap this here and convert hours. All right, and of course now we can just call create digital time in here and pass in our snapshot data like that. So that'll give us our string representation. And let's see, let me bring up the emulator for you guys so you can see. So there you go. We've got our little simple digital clock. And your screen's frozen? It shouldn't be. Let me check the stream. Does anybody else have this kind of problem going on? Or let me check the stream. It says here that the encoder is receiving fine amounts of information, so I'm not sure why your screen might be frozen. Let me bump up the encoder bitrate. Oops. So just give me a second, guys. I'll just bump this up a little bit, and maybe it'll help any of you guys who are getting lag or whatever. I'll bump it up to 7,000. Oh. That should help a little bit. So Cashew, you think it's complicated? All right, so Hallie says it is frozen, so for him it's frozen. You guys can still hear me though, right? I mean, the screen would be frozen right now because I'm not actually on the screen. Is it frozen? Can you see me scrolling around here now, typing and all that stuff? Then it shouldn't be frozen. All right, so we'll continue. If it's frozen, then I'll go back. I don't know what I'll do. I guess I'll just leave it in, and there's really nothing I can do about that. All right. So let's now set up the timer builder. Sorry about that. And to me, the stream looks like it's working. At least I'm looking on my tablet. Anyway, all right. So, all right, where was I? Kind of lost my train of thought. All right, timer builder. So we want to pass the date time into this widget. And as it is currently, we just have our timer builder. So we're going to have like a variable here called time, and we'll pass in our snapshot.data, and that'll be our date time. So in here, we'll have final date time, call it time, and then we'll add this to the constructor like that. All right, and so then we're going to need a custom paint widget instead of the container. And we'll key in our painter. So we just put in the painter, which we'll call, what do we call it? I think it's just called timer painter. So we need to import this, by the way. So let's go ahead and do that. And by the way, these imports are all funky. There we go. So now I can just call timer painter. And this, I don't think it will work. The timer painter is looking for an animation of type double. We're going to need to change that into a date time. So let me come in here and just call this date time. And then we'll just remove any of the references to animation. And actually, I'll just change them to time. Let's just type time.second in here. And I'll do the same down here just to get rid of the errors. This is not really a good solution. We also don't need this super repaint declaration. So this dot time. Whoa. All right, there we go. So this should show something. It's probably going to look weird. So now let's save it. Let's see. All right, so we're getting an error, and that's fine. That's to be expected. Let me kind of get rid of the emulator so you guys don't have to see that blinking red. All right, I should be back. Let me know what you guys see with regards to the video, whether or not it's continuing forward as it should. With the clock on there, you guys should at least see that changing if the stream's working. All right, so Kevin says it looks better. What about you, Cashew or Matt? Any of the other people who saw issues before? All right, 411 on the emulator. Is the second hand, or is the second counting up still? Refreshing nicely. All right, good. All right, so I think we're good to go. Let me just kind of go over what I did before so you guys can catch up if you didn't see it. So basically all I did was I created the string function. This is just literally just repeating this over and over again, of course, without in minute and second. We're not converting it from 24 hours to 12. So just time toString pad left to make it so it's double digits. We just repeat that for the minute and the second. And then converting the hours from 24 hours to 12. And yeah, this is inside of our align in the stack. And then we have our timer builder, which I'm passing in the date time. And I've wired it up so we're just passing the date time into the timer painter. And for now, the timer painter does nothing, simply because it doesn't really know what to do. I just changed a few things in here, and yeah, just not really working properly yet. So let's get that going. So essentially we just want to make a circle for our seconds, and if we could do that. All right, so Cashew says it looks good, and so does Halai. All right. If we can get our a circle for our seconds, then we'll make our minutes and our what's it called? Our minutes and our hours. I don't know why I'm blanking on that. All right, so there are a few things that I want to do first. Let's create some constants. So create full circle in radians. So this is just math.pi times 2. And then let's see. This should be neg quarter math.pi. This, I want this to be divided by 2 and make it negative. So these are going to be helpful simply because the way that these functions work, the canvas functions, when you're drawing like a circle, you need to input everything in radians. And the way it starts is it starts at the bottom of the screen, so it'll start at math.pi divided by 2. So you can use this to kind of push it up to the top where we want it to be. So at 12 o'clock, we basically use this to change it from 6 to 12. All right, so let's, we've got our time. Let's see, we've got our colors. Maybe we want like a width value. Actually, no, I'll leave that for now. We'll just leave that alone. All right, so we've got this paint thing. That seems all right. And then down here, we're creating a circle. Let's create some functions to create a circle because we're going to have to draw circles, or multiple circles rather. So let's just create a function here. Create circle. We'll have it take in a canvas size, the width that we want the circle to be, and then a paint. So canvas and size get put into this painter, and then the width and the paint are things that we created in here. So to create our circle, we'll just say canvas.draw circle. And in here, we need to put in the center. So with the way that the canvas works, let me pull up the emulator here. So the way that the canvas works is at the very top left is the origin. So that's 0.0. Then at the very bottom right is, it's going to be like, in this case, I guess this is like 400 pixels by, say, 700 pixels. So our center needs to be in the middle of the screen. So it's going to be the width divided by 2 and the height divided by 2. We can use a helper for that though. So we can just say size.center, and then we can pass in offset.0. And what that does is it gets the size of the screen that this painter is on, then gets the center, and then we tell it we want this to be right there in the middle of it. All right, so then with our radius is just, it's going to be size.width. So that's just the width of the screen, and then we'll divide this by our width that we're passing in here. And what that'll do is it'll allow us to control the size of the circle relative to the size of the screen. And then the paint will just be our paint. Just pass it in like that. So that's what we want to color the circle. All right. So we can go ahead and let's draw one. What I'm going to do here is just get rid of all this for now. And, oh right, of course, we need to be able to modify our values, our datetime values, the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. We need to convert them into decimal point values, or rather radians. So radians corresponding to the circle. And maybe this will help. Let me pull up like a diagram of like circle radians so that you guys can see what I'm basically doing here. All right. So this is what a circle will look like in radians. So we have degrees on the left side here, and then radians on the right side. So if I wanted to create a circle all the way around, it'll be 2 times pi. But of course, say like our second hand is at 0, it'll be pi divided by 2. And then as it progresses, it needs to continue up and up and up and up, all these numbers like that. So to convert our values into these radians, we're going to use our constant that we created here, the full circle constant. It's back in here. So the full circle constant, and then we can divide the value by 60. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So we'll just create a value called second time, and we'll just say time dot second dot or time dot second divided by 60. So we divide that by 60. That'll give us a decimal. Then we multiply all of this by our full circle. So 2 times pi. And that'll give us the second time in radians. And we can do the same thing for minute time. So we just do this. Instead, we do minutes. And then for hour time, instead of dividing by 60, we can divide by 12. So like that. And that'll give us this decimal point that we can use to basically track where we want our arcs to be along our circles. All right. So let's create our circles, and so essentially we just create circle, pass in our canvas and our size, and our width is how big we want it to be in relation to our screen. So I'm just going to pass in 2 for now, just to kind of see what it looks like. Let's see if that shows us anything. Oh, of course, because the paint is the background color, it's not going to paint anything. So we want to change this. Let's make it like colors blue or something. There we go. So we've got this circle hanging out at the top. We want to now center that thing. Let's see. Excuse me. So I think the reason why it's not centered is because of the aspect ratio. We just need to, well, first of all, we want to convert this into landscape mode. Let's see what it looks like in that. All right, so now our circle is centered. But of course it goes off the screen because it's way too big. Let me see how that looks to you guys. All right, that's kind of screwy. Let me make it so that the emulator actually lines up with the screen. Hang on. Probably should have anticipated this. Sorry if you guys don't see the screen properly yet. Kind of screwed up all my layouts. That's not right. Okay, well, I'll just do this manually. All right. So let me bring the emulator back. Just grab this. All right, so that looks a little bit better. All right. So hopefully you guys can see me typing. Let me just, I'll get rid of the emulator so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So, all right, we've used 2. We need to make this smaller. So to make it smaller, we make the width larger. So I'll make it 4. If we bring back the emulator, you can see here that the circle now fits better. And actually, whoops, you can see that kind of looks like it's an oblong. That's not actually the case on my screen because of the way that the emulator is being rendered. It's not fitting properly. But yeah, just take my word for it that it actually looks like it should look. Let me see if I can reload this thing. Let's see. This is a hell of a way to, well, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's just, all right, there we go. That's actually what it looks like. It's a little bit better at least. Or no, it's not. Still looks a little oblong, but that's not actually what it looks like on my screen. Sorry about that, guys. I'll just leave it like that for now. It's not really a big deal. Anyway. Okay, so I think the 4 seems about right. We can, of course, then increase the size of like the width of the circle and all that stuff. And we do that by increasing the size of the actual painter. So we're painting with this stroke here, with the paint rather. And so we can just, let's make the stroke width have a relation to the size.width. So we'll say size.width divided by, say, 10. And that'll make it much thicker. And if you see on the emulator, you can see it's just this big, thick blue circle. Also, the stroke type, we have it currently at round. That's going to look a little weird. So let's convert it to butt, so it's actually squared. And yeah, and then the rest should be fine. We could change it to fill instead. That'll make us an actual circle rather than a circle with a hole in it. Stroke is kind of what I want instead. All right, so we've got our circle. Now we want to be able to create the arc, and the arc is going to be based upon the time of our seconds right now, and then of course we'll have arcs for our minutes and our hours. So again, we'll create another function. I'm going to call this one create arc. So this will take in the canvas, the size, and take in all these parameters, and also the time. So let's add another double here, like that. And we'll use our canvas to draw an arc. And the way drawing arcs works, you put in a rectangle. The rectangle is basically the area of the screen that you want to draw this over. So we can just say rect from circle and put in our center. Our center is going to be size.center, and we put in our offset.0 again. And then the radius. So our radius will be, size.width divided by the width that we pass into the function. Let me make this more readable. There we go. All right. So now we need to define our angles. So the start angle is where we want this to start, and that's the constant that we created up here, the -quarter circle. So we can just use that to basically say, all right, we want to start at the top of the circle. Then the sweep angle is our time value. So we can just pass in time here. This use center value basically just says, do you want to fill up from where you're creating the arc to the center? In our case, we'll just say false, so no. And then, of course, the paint is just the paint. We're going to have to create another painter, though. This is just our, this painter here is for the background circle, so we can just call this a background painter or something. And then we'll create another one for our arc. We'll just call this timer painter. And again, I'll just use the same style. So I'll just cascade and set up the painter. So let's just make this, I guess, green for now. Should be colors. then the stroke width. Let's just say size that width. How do I want this to look? Probably want it to be much smaller than the other circle. So let's just make it, I don't know. You know what, actually, let's reuse our clock painter, and we'll use this timer painter for creating lines on our circle. So we want to be able to make it so that we can actually see where our arcs are. So I'll just make this 1.0, and then that way we have really thin lines, and then we'll have a stroke cap of stroke cap dots round, like that. All right. So let's create an arc now. So create arc on a canvas size. And we have what, our double width. So our first width, let's just put in 4 like we have with our circle. And then our time. The time is going to be our second time. And then we pass in our painter. So let's pass in the background painter. And what we can do here is just change the color. So we can make this colors green, like that. So even though we're reusing that object, we now have this kind of green arc appearing around that circle. So there we go. We've got this working out. Actually looks decent. That's just our seconds though, of course. And you can see it's updating every second. So as the decimals change, or rather as the seconds update in the middle, the circle or the arc starts to move around the circle. All right, so I kind of hinted to this before. I also want to make like little lines around our circle that show us where these arcs are so that we can tell the time. You know, so like for our second circle, we'll have 60 of them. For our minute circle, we'll have 60 of them. And then for our hour circle, we'll have 12 of them. So let's put them underneath of our arc. So the way that Canvas works, when you draw something, it goes on a layer. And then when you draw something, another something, it goes on the layer above it. So the circle is below the arc because we drew the circle first and the arc second. If I drew the arc first, then it would be below the circle. So if we want the lines to be on the circle and below the arc, then we need to draw them between the circle and the arc. All right, so let's just do that then. And all we really need to do is create a for loop here. And we'll just iterate from 0 to 60. Oops. And, oh, of course. We do want to go canvas.save. What this does is it saves the circle that we drew here. And then after we run this for loop, we can call canvas.restore to pull out that circle again. So we draw the lines on the circle, then restore the circle, and then build our arc. That way, if we do anything, if we have to like translate our lines around or move them, you know, move the canvas around or modify it in any way, we don't actually affect the arc or the circle. So let's create our line. So canvas.drawLine. And so I'm thinking this will be an offset size.width. Let's just divide this by 2. Size.height divided by 2. I know this is probably going to be way too big. So the way the line works is this is the starting point, and then the second one is the ending point. So let's just do size.width. Let's divide this by 3, and then size.height divided by 3, And I'm not sure if you guys can see this properly, because I'm sure the emulator's in the way. And then we'll put in our timer painter here. All right, so we've got one line. You can kind of see that it's a bit off. Let's change the color. So I'm gonna think what I'll do here is get our timer painter. I'll set the color, and I'm going to use primaries rather. So this is an array of colors, and I think there are 17 or 18 of them in there. So we can just take our value of I and take the modulus of it by 17. This way, what it'll do is it'll change color every single time it gets drawn. So notice, of course, we just have the one line. We need to rotate our canvas around so that we draw 60 lines around our circle. So we can use our canvas.rotate along with the k full circle constant. So this is just rotating it around 2 times pi. And let's see, will that update? Probably have to update to get this to work. Oh, of course, this needs to be divided by 60. What am I thinking? So we're rotating it around the entire circle. Now you can see our lines are really out of, they're not quite centered. And that's simply because of the way that the canvas is. So we'll translate the canvas over so that the middle is on the middle of our screen. So we can just say canvas.translate. We can say size.width divided by 2, and then size.height divided by 2. So that's the middle of our screen. And there we go. So now this is going around our circle. So now we can mess with the widths of these lines, or rather the size of these lines, to make them line up with our circle. So let's turn this one into, like, say 4, and this one into, say, like 6. All right, so that's a little better. They're actually on our circle. Looks like an eyeball, actually. It looks like an iris. This might actually be better at like 3.9 instead. Whoops, not 3.0. You can see, like, when I put in 3.0, it kind of twisted them weirdly. So this is a little bit better. It's still not perfect. Obviously, I'd want to add some like shadowing and stuff to make it look a little bit better. But you can see that these roughly mark where the arc will go next. So they're slightly in front of, but that's simply because of the way that they're being drawn. They're slightly in front of the arc, and they go all the way around the circle. Now let's see. I'm just going to kind of watch it. I want to see it get to the end. See what happens, because I have a feeling, yeah, it's never full. So because of the way that our seconds and our minutes work, we did this with our hours. When the hours get to the value of 24, it turns into 0. With our seconds, when they get to 60, they go from 59 to 0, and then they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Same with our minutes. So instead of doing that for our clock, we want to make it so that they actually reach 60, and then they go 1, 2, 3, 4. That way we actually have an arc that fills the entire circle. So let's create a function to modify this stuff so that we can actually fix it. So let's just call this fix second and hour. It'll take in an int, if I could type, and then we'll just say return if time equals 0, 60 else time. That's all we really need to do. So that just removes the 0 from our minutes and seconds. We don't have to do the same with our hours because we're already fixing them way above. Actually, no, we're not. We're not. we're fixing them for our digital clock, but we're not fixing them for, and this should be min, by the way. We're not fixing them for this stream because we're sending the date time in here. So we need to make another one to fix the hour. What I'd probably do in the future is just make the other one a global function, probably put them in a different file, call it like utils or something, and then just call it globally instead of redefining it. So in this case, we'll just just say return time equals 0, 12 time, like that. So same thing that we're doing here, just with 12 instead of 60. All right. Anybody have any questions thus far? Or any comments, concerns? Let me apply these functions. So basically, I just want to say fix, I think it was sec and min on the time second, like this. And then we'll do the same thing on our minute. And then, of course, we want to fix the hour down here as well. There we go. So now, when our circle or arc rather gets to the top, it fills the entire circle and then it starts over again. That actually looks quite a bit better. All right, so we've got one circle here, and what I'm thinking is that it'd actually be better. Well, first of all, let's change the color here. So let's make it blue-gray, so it's a bit of a better background color. But I'm thinking that we just create one circle, we make it really big, and then we have multiple arcs going around that circle. So I think that might be the way to go, rather than having multiple concentric circles. And it also will make it kind of look like an eyeball, and it already kind of looks like one. So we might as well run with that concept. So with our circle, let's make this bigger. Let's make it like 4.5. So that's a bit bigger. Yeah, all right, so that should be all right for now. So let's now create our other arcs. What I'll do is just create them down here. And I basically just want them to be smaller than the other ones. So this one is size 4 with relation to the screen, and that's our second time. And then our this will be our minute time here. And we want this to be, let's put in minute time. We want this to be smaller than the circle, or than the second one. So let's make this like 4.9, I guess. There we go. So now we've got this inner circle. Of course, it's the same color. Let's change it. So let's make it red or something. So there you go. So it kind of overlays on top of the circle, and then this will be our minutes. So if we look at our clock right now, it's 43, and actually it just moved. So that looks about right to me. So it looks roughly what it should. I actually wasn't intending to overlap these circles, but I actually like the way it looks. So I may just leave that alone. Let's create our other arc. So our arc. So this one, the width for this one, let's make it like, I don't know, 6. And we want to change the color here. Let's make this one, instead of red, we'll make it like deep purple. Okay, and of course our hour time seems to be wrong. Let's see why. So let's let me just print it out because I'm curious what value is coming out here. All right, so in the debug console, we're getting 8.37. That doesn't seem about right at all. Oh, I know why. It's because we didn't convert it from 24 hours inside of there. So we need to convert it from 24 hours and then do our calculation. So I guess what we can do is just reuse the other function that we created in the main here. So convert hours. Let's just go ahead and I'll just take the body from this and put it in this fix hour function. There we go. So this should be 4. So 3 would be a 90-degree angle, and then 4 would be about there. Then 5 would be like here, and then 6 would be straight up and down. So that seems about right. We do want to have lines for the hour hand. We don't really care about the minute hand so much because we've already got our second hand lines. And of course, minutes are 60 seconds and hours are 12 seconds instead. Let me see, are these lining up properly? It looks like they are. Okay, so let's make the hour lines. I guess we'll put them over top of the seconds and the minutes. I'm not sure what this will look like, but we'll give it a shot. So let me just copy all this. And after this arc here, just call that. And you can actually see now these lines are over top of minutes and seconds. We want to change this so that it only creates our hours. Let's see, if we just call 12, how does that look? So 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, we should probably change the width so that they differentiate from the second ones, so that it actually doesn't just blend in. So let's see. Let's go like instead of 3.9, let's go 5 to say, I don't know, let's make this 10. So we'll make these really long. There we go. So we can now see them. They're like pushed further in because they're corresponding to our hour. Maybe we should also make them a little larger in terms of width. We can do that by changing the painter. So just like we're changing the color in here, we can go ahead and change the stroke width. Now let's make this equal to say like 3.0. And you can see now they're much thicker than our other lines. There are a few other things in here that I'm not quite that happy with yet. I'm trying to think of what I want to do with this thing. So I'm thinking that perhaps we should just color it a little bit better. It actually came out pretty good. I was not expecting it to come out like this easily, to get something that actually looks nice this easily. Now granted, there are a lot of things you could do with this clock. For instance, adding shadows, maybe making the arcs into a gradient. Of course, there are a lot of things you could do with the background too. For instance, they mentioned that they want to be able to bring in weather, so maybe you make weather animations like a sun, like a rain cloud, stuff like that in the background. Yeah, so that's something to consider. There are a few things that we could do here. So let me try. I want to see what this looks like. So this is kind of a little weird. So first of all, rather than stroke, let's go with fill. I just want to see what this looks like. All right, so that's a bit wacky. So you can see as our seconds fill up, they're essentially just building a circle rather than moving around the circle. And the same goes for our minutes and our hours. We could do this. This is a very abstract way to tell time. Of course, we would have to change the way that our lines are so that they actually correspond with these new circles. This is actually kind of interesting. It might be worth exploring and maybe messing around with to make it look, worth doing. But as you can see in the beginning portions, it's almost, you almost can't see the circle because it's just such a small sliver. So maybe that's the biggest downside. And of course, if you're working with hours and minutes and they're really small, say like at 1 a.m. and it's like 1 a.m. and 1 minute, it's just not going to be intelligible. You're not going to be able to read it. Of course, I don't know, maybe the clock screen is pretty big, maybe it has a lot of pixels, maybe you would be able to see it. Alrighty. So does anybody have any questions? I'm going to change this back. You want to get the code for the project? All right. Well, I've got all this on GitHub. I'm going to push it to GitHub after the stream finishes. You are free to do whatever you want with the code. Of course, it'd be kind of, well, you could submit it as is if you wanted to, but honestly, if you're going to submit something to the contest, you might want to work on it yourself a bit just to differentiate it from, whatever I'm going to submit. This is not what I'm going to submit. This is more of a prototype of just a few ideas that I had. So yeah, you're welcome to do whatever you want with the code. But yeah, like I said, I would not recommend anybody just take the code as is and just submit it to the contest. You probably wouldn't do very well. A lot of this code is kind of sloppy, needs to be reorganized, a few things need to be added in, and the way with the animations, they could be better as well. Especially since we're just drawing everything with this custom painter, we could split it up into multiple painters and refactor a lot of this code, make it a bit more readable. But yes, it will be on GitHub afterwards. You can go ahead and take a look at it, Lewis. Yeah, you're right. Kevin, using some kind of animation might be interesting, especially like a fade animation. It would be cool if we could like change the opacity of these. So perhaps rather than just changing the colors here, so like we're doing here, we could change the opacity, we could change the alpha. So here, for instance, like if I come on here, I can say with opacity, I could take like a value, say second time, and multiply this by, or divide this by 60. And, well, you may not actually see the second hand until it gets pretty far because it's now very opaque, or very transparent rather. But it's there. It's very hard to see. That's an idea. You could definitely do something like this. And if we added like, say 0.4 to this, it would actually make it look much better, so you could actually see the transparency. Something like this might be worth doing, like actually adding transparency and then pushing the hour lines into the background. Anyway. Yeah, no, it isn't very efficient. It'd be better to actually build an animation on top of it. I'm just showing you an example of what you could do. I mean, and obviously these colors could be done better, and using the primary colors like this is not exactly the best way to do things either. You could make your own colors. In fact, one thing I did think about before the stream was adding like Roman numerals to the clock. That's another thing that we could consider, just putting like Roman numerals around the hour lines. That would take too long though, and I don't really have the time to do it on stream, unfortunately. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments or anything like that? We've been streaming for about an hour, 15 minutes. That seems about right. All right, well, I'll let you guys think of some questions. I'll, like I said, I'm going to put all this on GitHub, and I may do another follow-up stream, just kind of show you guys some of the more advanced techniques of like adding shadows and really kind of making the code more cohesive and look a little better. I'm sorry about all the stream problems before too. That was kind of a blunder. It's part of the reason why I was delaying the stream a bit. I was having some decoder problems. Hopefully the next stream everything will be settled and that will not happen again. Everybody's thanking you. Everybody's thanking me. I appreciate that. Of course, I'm kind of getting something out of this too, you know, because I'm building this as an entry for the contest. And, you know, the actual first prize of that contest is like a $10,000 computer. Yeah, you can make it glow. That would be pretty cool. What I'll likely do, just to let you guys know, is take the animation here, keep it as is, then maybe make like a transparent, what are they called? I think it's called a mask. So you make like a mask and you just overlay it on top of this animation. And you could do it with something like Flare. So I could like make this like crazy mask, overlay it on top. And what I'm thinking is that I do it in such a way so that each of the lines looks like it's made out of fluid. So as it fills up the circle, it kind of looks like the fluid is just kind of flowing through. I think that's what I might want to do. Or, given that this looks like an eyeball, it might be cool if I made it blink a few times. That might be something, either make it blink. Oh, I completely forgot. So might as well take the text and actually make it look good rather than just be this tiny little puny little text in the middle. So let's do that before we close out of the stream. So all we're really going to do here is just mess around with the text styling, and we just want to make it so that it's much bigger. And yeah, obviously we could bring in a font too. That might be something to consider later. But yeah, so all right, so for the text, add our style, and we'll say text style. So let's mess around with the font size. So I'm gonna start with like 40. See how big that is. Might be a little too big. So let's go to like, say 32. Now that's a bit better. So then of course we can change the color. We could do the whole primaries thing. So colors.primaries. So we could have this change, and let's change it based on the hour. So the hour, and let's do mod 17. So the color will change every hour. This may not be the most efficient way to do it. It may not be the nicest way to do it either. It might be better to explicitly define the different colors that you want for each hour. Then let's give it some font weight. So font weight, let's make it pretty heavy. So W800 might be good. It makes it nice and thick. And then let's maybe add some letter spacing. So 1 would be normal letter spacing, then 1.2 just kind of gives it 20% more. 4 kind of spreads it out a little bit better. All right, so that looks decent. Kind of don't like that the line is connecting with the 0 here. So if I was going to continue here, I'd probably decrease the size of those lines anyway, because they're a little too far into the middle. So this would make them pretty long. So instead of 10, maybe make them 6 like this. Nah, that's too small. There we go, that's a little better. So make them 8. And on the other side, maybe make these 4. So they're a little bit further out. And actually, we look at our other ones, they're 3.9. So let's just make it 3.9 so it just covers up the second lines that are there. And even better would be to have them be slightly longer. There we go. So that looks a bit better, I think, especially with the text. And notice that the time just changed from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. The color of the text changed from brown to red. So that's the whole primary thing that we added in there. And you can see that the hour hand is here, the minute hand is all the way up here, and that will change as, of course, the time changes. All right, so I think that's it for today. Thank you guys for coming out to the stream, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Met says I'd remove the lines. Well, I mean, that's up to you. I think they're all right, and I think there are ways to integrate them better. You could absolutely, you could kind of make them a little bit more opaque, or you could do some shadowing, some gradients and stuff, and just kind of make it a bit more interesting. Anyway, like I said, thanks for coming out, and yeah, I hope to see you guys next time. And I was thinking of just doing another clock stream later, but we'll see. I may do something else, and it depends. It depends on what I decide to do with this clock here. Anyway, guys, have fun, and I hope you guys are able to make your own clocks, even if you use mine for your example as well. Hello, thank you very much. That's flattering to hear. Thank you, Matt. Anyway, thanks, guys.